Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Dandadan Season 1, Episode 10. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode, where our trio is standing in front of the head nurse, who's kind of got this kind of gangster Yankee thing going on. And I don't know why my immediate thought was, for whatever reason, she kind of felt like a Persona character, like a Persona Social Link character. I guess, like, because it's not a one-to-one, but I guess I almost get the same vibe from her as you get from some of the nurses. Like, I believe, like, the nurse in Persona 4 was, like, the Devil Arcana, and the one from 5 is the Death Arcana. It's not like they have the same personality or quirk as Queen, as her name is, but I don't know, just something about her made me feel like... Just made me... I love, like I said, she's just got that thing. She's like, are you being bullied? Because if you are, just let me know. I'm like, yo, you got to appreciate her having their back. They're like, no, we're not being bullied. And that one teacher came in and been like, oh, there's an announcement for you. She's like, hey, what did I tell you about not entering without knocking on the door first? And she starts whipping him. And she's like, okay, I'll be right back, guys. And cuts the lights on. I love that whole bit. So... in the aftermath of all this, they're still reeling with how did they deal with all this. I love that the only one who was not stressed out about it was Ken. Like, Ira and Momo were the ones the most freaked out about, like, oh, we were naked in front of everyone. It's like, yes, you were. Yeah, but I mean, obviously Ken was like the most naked. But I think also for Ken, it's like, well, people are going to notice that, but also like he is someone that isn't, he is kind of invisible. So he's not, I think it just speaks volumes where it's like, he's not as concerned about it. If anything, he's just worried probably like what it might mean for Momo and Ira, but you know, probably more so than anyone Momo, but yeah. He ends up kind of piecing some stuff together where he's like trying to figure out like, why do they keep coming after my junk? And it's like, now it's like they're actually after Turbo Granny's powers. And now that Ira has Silky's powers, it's like, now they're going to come after you too. They're like, but why? And it's like, why go after yokai powers this way? Wouldn't it be easier just to go after other yokai? And then Ken has like a big brain revelation where he's like, oh, maybe they can't. Maybe, like, why have aliens, despite all their technology, they haven't invaded Earth? Like, it's just little things here and there, but no, like, full-scale invasion. He's like, maybe they can't. Maybe aliens are weaker to yokai, and yokai are, like, folklore about them are scattered throughout the world, so they're, like, a worldwide thing, and so the aliens can't permeate the supernatural world, so... It's kind of this endless struggle. At least that's Ken's perspective on it. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. That, I mean, this is speculation on his part as someone who's only, you know, recently become aware of the yokai world, but is familiar enough with aliens that it's like interesting. I'm curious to find out if there is legitimacy to that, like, or, you know, is that what this kind of is? So it's like, once again, it still doesn't fully eradicate their issue. But that doesn't deal with the fact that they're also going to still have to deal with yokai and stuff too. So it's not a permanent solution, you know. It's just kind of like like I said, just laying the groundwork of how the world works. But yeah, it's like, how do we handle the aftermath of this whole thing about like what happened with us? And Ira's like, oh, I'll just say that Momo is the one behind all this. And then she's even suggesting, Ira's like, you should do the same thing, Ken. But Ken doesn't want to throw Momo under the bus. But Momo's like, fine, whatever. Because I guess, like, I think it's the thing of like, Momo doesn't care what other people think about her. She never kind of really has. I mean, except for like her ex and stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, even helping out Ken in episode 1, it's just like, yo, she's just like, she hates douchebags. And it's like, right, she sticks up for the people she cares about, but it's just kind of like, you can say whatever you want to about me, I don't care. Even going back to episode 1 again, it's like, right, it wasn't even the fact that people were making fun of her, it was more so about people making fun of her grandmother, and that's what pissed her off. So she's like, fine, Ira wants to throw me in a bus. Or maybe she sniffed the BS like ahead of time, knowing that Ira wasn't. But yeah, Ira's friends come in and be like, oh my God, it was Momo that did this, didn't she? And they'd be like, Belle. And Ken kind of finally explains things to Momo too about like, right, I was trying to work out. She's like, well, why didn't you say anything? He was like, because I want to look cool in front of you. And she's just kind of like, what? No. And she's like, what? Show me your face. Like, why would you want to try and look cool in front of me? He's like, because I'm a guy. And she's like, well, what does that mean exactly? He's like, you know what it means. Like, I don't have to explain. It's like, yeah, he just wants to look cool in front of the girl that he admires and likes a lot and thinks is super cute. But yeah, then Momo's friends show up and they're trying to figure out what happened. And they were like, yo, like you guys were like hugging naked. What's going on here? And then one of the friends kind of deduces everything. Her deduction is that there's a love triangle thing going on, which there kind of is. And she's like, oh, like you were basically having like a naked Coliseum move and stuff like that. It's like that's why Momo was talking to the mantis shrimp, because she wanted to learn its moves to use against Ira. Like that's her friend's thought process about the whole thing. I love that whole breakdown. Like I said, her kind of going detective mode with that revelation. So but either way, we cut to Ira, who is surrounded by everyone. They're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, guys, I just want to forget about it." And then like, love her showing her true face, being like, "The perks of my popularity. Like, I had no idea I'd be able to utilize it in this way. It's like just the effort show. This is the result of my effort of every day." But then the moment people started trashing on Momo, being like this and that, oh, it had to be her. Oh, did you hear she would sleep with anyone? I was like, yeah, I heard that rumor. And you could tell that hurt Ira because she's got to know Momo now. And it's like Momo helped save her. And it's like, yeah, she's been like caught up on Ken, but it's still the thing of Momo is kind of, she saw like who Momo really is as a person, especially after this last tussle. It's like, right, I've spent more time with you. Because obviously like during the whole Silky thing, they didn't get to spend that much time together. But post, like their fight at the beginning of episode 8, but also the whole situation throughout episode 9 of them fighting the Seppos and Nessie and Boxing Dude. So she has a different perspective and she started feeling guilty about it, knowing like, right, she was the one that started spreading that rumor out of jealousy and anger. And then I was curious to see what she was going to do. I thought she was just going to defend Momo, which she does, but she just says like, I'm the one that spread that rumor. And they're like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, I'm the one that did that. So don't talk ill of Momo. And she walks away. And she kind of breaks down a little bit as she's walking away, because I think for her, it's like, she's almost probably thinking to herself, why did I do that? Why did I shoot myself in the foot for Momo? Out of anybody, why Momo? Right? She probably still views Momo. I'm curious, is she still keeping up the shtick of believing Momo to be a demon? She didn't mention it this episode. She was mentioning it obviously all last episode, but I don't know if she still believes Momo to be a demon after everything. I mean, she didn't really bring it up with Ken, but it's the thing of, she at least goes, well, Ken's got a human heart, and she's kind of probably recognizing whatever Momo's circumstances are, she's got a human heart, so... But maybe after post everything last episode, now she's a little more like, okay, so you've got the energies of Turbo Granny in you, just like I've got Silky, so I'm kind of let all that slide. So either way, she's all alone, and her Momo sits down with her, and it's like, oh, like you and Momo kind of figures it out. It's like, yeah, you didn't badmouth me. She's like, of course I did. I threw you under the bus. But it's like, yeah, right. That's why I'm curious, like, is that why Momo was fine with Ira doing that? Because she knew in the long run Ira wouldn't? Because it seemed like Momo's, like, I think with the exception of Ken, Momo seems to be pretty good at reading people. And by that, I mean, like, right, like, she doesn't realize, like, she likes Ken, but she doesn't know how Ken feels about her, and he doesn't really know how she feels about him, typical romance situation of will they, won't they. And ultimately, I'm curious if that's her thing, or is it, like I said, my earlier point of she just doesn't care what people think about her. The only person who does care what people think about her is Ken, and the only person who never wants to be misunderstood by is her too. So just interesting. Either way, Boxing Dude shows up, and it's like, oh, ready for a tussle again, but he's heavily wounded after the previous fight. We get this sad backstory where we find out the reason why he took this job is his child is sick, and he's trying to make money and try to be a good dad. And like, wow, we're just dropping like tragic backstory. Once again, it's not Silky tragic, but you're still like, oh, you feel a little bad for the guy. Because they were talking about cutting his pay like last episode and stuff like that. So you kind of feel bad for the guy. But luckily, he got taken back to Momo's place and got bandaged up and everything. And I love the back and forth, the running bit in the episode where it's like, see, Grandma, it's an alien. And then Seiko being like, nah, it's not. It looks more like a Kappa. But then you have Ken be like, well, there are theories that Kappas are themselves actually aliens. So, I mean, we saw with Nessie that, like, I guess that is technically the Loch Ness Monster was an alien itself. So, there's a lot of validity and crossover between all of this. So, but either way, despite everything, they did, like, help him out. Because it's like, well, they didn't know his backstory at the time, but it's like, well, do we just leave you here? It's like, you cause some issues from us, but maybe it's also the thing of, well, we know you're not actively after like Ken's penis or his powers or anything like that, or even Ira's powers. You were just a hired gun, so maybe that's why they were okay with taking care of him. But they were like, yeah, we'll kick your ass if need be. But then like he sat down and ate, which I love that it turns into like a 3-way, like 2-on-2 brawl where like Granny is beating up on Punchy Dude because of some of the food he's eating. Ira and Momo are fighting over food, and so is Granny. She's pissed that he ate that kid ate certain tuna, so that turns into a whole tussle. But yeah, Punchy Dude reveals, like, right, his son has an illness where basically every time he pisses or poops, he's bleeding heavily, and he has to constantly get new blood put into his body. And it turns out his wife died from the same thing. So the person we saw with the little boy in that flashback, I guess that might have been like a friend or maybe a sibling of our Punchy Dude, because he said like his wife had already died. So that's really sad, and he just, he feels pathetic because he can't protect the person he wants to, but he's like, I'm so weak, that's why I failed to protect my wife. And Ken steps up and is like, right, you'll take my penis then. And they're like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, just take my penis, then you'll get whatever payments you need that you could take care of your child. But Momo's like, I get it, and I appreciate, I think it's dope that you want to do that, but it's like, right, that's going to be a one-time payment, and even if that happens, like, how are we going to get your penis back? He's like, we'll work it out. And Ira's just kind of like, oh, look at you being such a good guy. She's like, don't worry, I'll help you get back your you-know-what if it happens. And Momo's just like, shut up. Just shut up. Just stay over there. We don't need you involved in this conversation. But it's like, obviously, like, Punchy Dude had promised that he would never hurt them anymore because of everything, and the kindness that they've shown him, and he doesn't want to hurt anyone, and he knows like this would be a sad situation for Ken, so he was going to just walk away because he can't, because his people, like, their whole job thing is being hired out. They take foreign currency, and I love the whole like certain words are different, and Momo's like, I don't understand what you're saying, because it's like they have different words. I just love, I'm so curious to hear what that sounds like in English. Like what was the, like, how did they handle that? What does that sound? Because I don't know if I've talked about that. I haven't heard the English dub. I'm watching it subbed, so. But it was really interesting where it turns out Seiko notices something like a smell, and we find out that his people's, going back to the point I was making, like, before, I'll go ahead and finish it. Their people's blood is milk, which is like, oh, interesting. Wasn't expecting that. It's like, oh, so that's what the white stuff is around you. Obviously, you jump to conclusions about other stuff, but it's like, okay, so like milk is like the equivalency of what their blood is made of. But anyway, going back to the point I was going to make earlier, but I trailed away from it, I forgot, is like, right, the whole foreign currency thing, which makes me think of like trails, specifically Trails of Cold Steel, but it's Trails / Kaseki reference in general, but it's like the Northern Jaegers. They would leave behind, basically Jaegers are like mercenaries in that continuity, and basically they would go to foreign countries, do whatever jobs, death, whatever, they kill, destroy stuff, like whatever shady stuff they got to do just to make money to bring it back to their country of North Ambria, because North Ambria went through a disaster like 28 years ago that like devastated the land, and the country's extremely poor, needs money. So it's kind of a similar thing. But our main guy would say like, yo, other people went off and were able to do stuff, but like me, I'm on the weaker end, so there was not many job opportunities I could get. So, but yeah, now he doesn't have to worry as much about the money, because it's like, hey, Seiko is like, now that we know that it was milk, like, hey, I have a farmer friend who can hand you a cow, you can take it back home. And he just breaks down in tears because he's so like, oh my god, you helped me. And now we also see like, well, we know aliens, the whole like abducting cows and stuff like that, but now it's like, well, there is a cow abduction at the beginning of in the intro, and now you're like, once again, so much in the intro, because we even saw like the Sepio, Nessie and Punch Dude put together. That thing, like, it's in the intro as well. It's in one of those kind of like, I don't know what you would call that drawing. It's almost like a hieroglyphic drawing. It's the one that's just kind of like, it's not a very, God, I don't know how I'm describing it, but you'll see it in the intro. It's like, once again, there's so many little Easter eggs of like, oh, it's there, like out of like without context, it meant nothing. But now, like in retrospect, you're like, oh my God, all this stuff's here in the intro, like the cow getting abducted, and it's like, yeah, and it was significant to this. So he's taking off, he's happy, he's like, hey, I'll help you guys out if you ever need my help. It's like, well, how would they go about contacting you? But let's not worry about that for now. And he takes off. I love that it's such a big spectacle thing. I mean, it's also beautifully animated, like how that like ship like taking off goes. But it's like, yeah, it's just out in the middle of the sky. This ship is big as hell. And I'm like, did no one in town notice that? Like, I mean, we don't know how close their nearest neighbors are, because I mean, that Seiko's place is kind of like the temple place is pretty like isolated from what we can really tell, but who knows like how close other facility, I mean how other close the town is and stuff. So like, hey, that all kind of worked out, kind of a nice like, oh, like everything's great. And also now we have Momo, Ira, and Ken having to beg Seiko to buy them new uniforms, which she's willing to do it for Ira and Ken, but it's like, yeah, this is like the third time this has happened, considering like they keep, well, Momo makes sense, she lost her uniform in episode 1. Ken lost his as well, yeah, because like now this is like the second, yeah, it makes sense. So she basically has Psycho can be such a mean grandmother just to like be a stickler to her granddaughter. It's like, right, I want you to pretend to be this person, which I'm going to assume that's like a reference to like a well-known Japanese actor, which I looked it up, and yes, that is the case. I'm not familiar enough with Japanese cinema, so like I don't think I've seen anything he's done TV show or movie wise. Because I forgot to bring it up, but like Ken Takakura, the person that Momo's really into, is that. Someone had made the comparison of like, oh yeah, he's supposed to be like, the equivalency would be like George Clooney here in the States, I guess would be like the closest comparison, but it's like, hey, he's like a big time like actor or whatever. So it's kind of supposed to be the thing of, hey, she's a young girl, like super like into like this like silver fox kind of actor type of thing, I guess. I've never brought that up, but I'd heard that like being brought up by someone else, and I can't remember where I heard that, which I thought was interesting. But either way, so all that's going down, and then we meet our other protagonist. Was it is it Gigi, I believe? I can't remember now. I brought that up last episode. I was like, either this episode is going to heavily revolve around him, or he's going to pop up at the end of the episode. And lo and behold, he does. And it's like, oh, Momo knows him. At first I was like, he's not going to be like family or something, is he? But then like Seiko was like, oh, that's her childhood friend and first love. I was like, and here we go. Because the shoe's always been on the other foot, like Momo's jealousy has come up, you know, and we haven't really had Ken had to deal with it, but now he does. So now it's a love triangle turned into a love square. I mean, we also don't know like what Gigi feels about her now, and if she feels the same way about him. Like, once again, they were childhood friends. Like, who knows where that first love situation. I mean, you kind of don't forget your first love, but I'm trying to remember who my first love was. I don't. Oh, well, I do. Never mind. I was like, I don't think I do. Oh, it just clicked in my head. I do. There's a girl in my class named Megan. Specifically from like, I don't remember we were ever in any other classes together, but like I remember being in first grade thinking she was cute. Either way. So yeah, that's that. So I was like, interesting development. It's like, okay, so I wasn't sure in what way this guy was going to pop up and in what role he's going to play in this. So that's interesting to be like, oh, he's another love interest. It feels like, well, it's probably going to be the back and forth of like, will they get with the people they should be? Like Ken and Momo should be together. But then it makes you go like, well, you can only assume Gigi and like Ira will get together. Who knows? This might not be that story. I know there have been stories where it's like, oh, you have 4 like romantic situations and they kind of like switch off of other people. Sometimes it doesn't happen, where it's like, oh, like the romance situation plays out differently with like someone else outside. So like, for example, like Ira and Gigi might not ever get together. Hell, for all we know, in a future situation, they might get together, but then break up and then get with different people. There's always that possibility. But it feels like Ken and Momo are going to be in game, but it's obviously going to take a while for us to get there. Because, I mean, obviously, I haven't read the manga, so I don't know where that currently stands. And that might not be something that gets ever fully answered or, like, fully, like solidified of like we're officially dating until like the end of the series. Like it could easily be one of those things, because sometimes in anime and manga that typically does get saved until the very end of like any form of relationship. So we'll have to wait to see. So obviously, like the example I think about is like the webtoon manhwa Girls of the Wilds. That pretty much came down to the wire relationship wise, but no spoilers if you've never not watched it or read it or whatever, because there's a live action adaptation of tangents and all that. So I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Either way, I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us. Like I said, only 2 episodes left. I'm just kind of bummed that I'm like, it's almost already over. Obviously, like I said, like the manga's still ongoing, so there's plenty of story. I'm sure we haven't cracked that far into the story. I don't know how much this is adapted so far, so I'm sure we're still probably decently early enough in the manga story, but I'll look into that probably by the time we get to the end of the season. I'll probably compare and contrast and be like, okay, how much of the manga story to discover. Either way, to the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.